Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ask Kati Anything. I'm your host, licensed marriage and family therapist, Katie Morton. I'm so glad that you're here. For those of you who don't know, we have kind of switched things up, a little switcheroo, where 50% of the time I'm going to answer your questions just like this, and the other 50% of the time will be interviews with amazing people, friends of mine, other creators, other celebrities in the space, all sorts of goodness coming your way. But today I'm answering your questions. And for some reason, we've talked about this before, we sometimes end up with like themes to our questions. And there is a lot of conversations around eating disorders this week. So today I'm going to talk about what to do when your therapist cuts back on your sessions and how to deal with eating disorder recovery when our parents knew but didn't get us help early on, how to stop engaging in our eating disorder behaviors, and how to work on our eating disorder while also simultaneously trying to reparent ourselves. Then I'll also talk about how to deal with losing a therapist and why we reject the good or nice things that happen to us. Without further ado, let's jump into question number 1. This question says, Katie, what if your therapist decides to significantly cut back on your sessions, but you don't want that? I have a lot of abandonment issues and complex PTSD, so cutting back triggered all sorts of thoughts. I've been struggling, but I'm afraid to be vulnerable and tell them because I fear they'll think I'm being manipulative or too needy. I love this question. There's a lot to unpack here. Now, if a therapist is cutting back our sessions and we don't feel ready, the short answer is we have to communicate that. And I suspect that the reason your therapist is cutting back on your sessions is because they think you're doing well, because you said that you've been struggling, but you have been afraid to be vulnerable and tell them because you're afraid that it'll come across as manipulative or needy. And that's why they think you're doing better. And I don't mean to giggle. It's just almost like that self-sabotage, right? We all sabotage ourselves from time to time. I actually have a video coming out about that soon, but that kind of urge to do one thing inadvertently can cause another thing that we don't want to happen. And in this case, the best advice I have for you is to tell them that you're not ready to cut back on sessions, that you've been doing poorly, but you're having a tough time telling them. And however that comes out for you, maybe practice saying it, maybe start journaling about it so that you can get used to being honest. Because yes, I know vulnerability is rough. Whenever I share stuff about my own personal life online, I always have this like vulnerability hangover where I'm like, oh, what are people going to think, right? And you put yourself out there. But without vulnerability, there can't be true connection and true healing, especially in the therapeutic environment. And so I really want to encourage you to speak up about this. And I do also want to touch on a couple of things. First is the abandonment issues. Now, I want to bring this up because no matter what your therapist does, until we work to heal those things, meaning reparenting ourselves and, doing a lot of the inner child work and things like that, that's going to come up no matter what. And so we really need to let our therapist know, like, this is a big issue. I need to do some reparenting. I need to do some inner child work. You can even be like, hey, I heard from a therapist online that this could be helpful. What do you think? Right? Push it off to them. I don't know what's best. I'm not your therapist. They are. Let them know. Because the reason I brought that up is because if we don't do that work, then whenever we lower our number of sessions or see our therapist with less regularity, or maybe even stop therapy altogether because they think we're doing fine, we're not going to feel that way because we're going to feel abandoned, because that's what our experience has been thus far. Okay. That's the first piece. The second piece I want to address here is being too needy. This feeling that what we desire, what we require is just too much. So my homework for you is I want you to journal about where we think that thought came from. Did anybody tell us we were too much? Did we only get rewarded for like sitting down and shutting up, or like kids should be seen, not heard? Are there any of those like toxic types of phrases or conversations that we feel we've had? Because when we feel like we're too needy, it usually is we need the regular amount, right? Needing things, needing people, needing attention. Those are all regular basic human needs. There's nothing wrong with you because you need things. But somewhere along the line, someone has told you that the basic human needs that you require they're too much. That it's you overreaching, that you're being selfish or a jerk or whatever. And so I want you to do some journaling about where we think that comes from. And a great way to do that is to just be curious, not judgmental. No one's going to read this. You don't have to read this out loud to anybody. Unless you want to, you can. But know that it's just for you to get a deeper understanding into what you need and why we equate that with too much. It's always interesting. I feel that way too. I felt like not the too needy, but almost like I'm taking up too much space. That's what my experience has been. Almost like I need to like shrink myself or pretend that I'm not, I don't have as many needs or wants as someone else, right? Those are so closely tied. And learning where that comes from has been key to my healing, and I'm hoping it will be key to your healing as well. Let's move on to question number 2. Question number 2 says, I'm 16. I've had diagnosable bulimia for about 1.5 years and struggled with food for much longer than that. I found out about 6 months ago that my dad knew the entire time, but he didn't say anything because he, quote, thought I had it under control. How did he think that? I'm currently on a wait list for treatment, and my dad does his best to support me now, but I can't help but feel angry at him for not stepping in sooner. I've lost so much to my eating disorder, and I can't help but think about how much pain I could have avoided if someone had helped me early on. It feels immature to hold a grudge, especially because I didn't even want help back then. How do I move on from this? Thank you, Katie. This is a great question, and I have a couple of thoughts here. Now, first of all, obviously the sooner the better when it comes to interventions about mental health, especially eating disorders, like period. The sooner we get help, the better. Now, there's a couple of things. I have some tough love to give you, okay? And I don't mean this, when I say tough love, emphasis on the love. I'm giving you a tough truth because I believe it can help you maybe untangle yourself from this. Now, you said 2 things here. You said, number 1, that you're like upset and mad and probably up, because you said you could have avoided some pain. So there's like maybe some resentment there with your dad for him not intervening earlier on. And then at the same time you said, but I didn't even want help back then. And even though you were a child, and yes, your dad should have done something, I want you to, at this point forward, try to take ownership over your own situation, your own recovery. That's going to be paramount to you moving through, and when you do get treatment, finding that path to recovery for you, because no one else can do it for you. And yes, support is valuable and necessary. However, we have to want it. I can't tell you how many patients, whether it's eating disorder or otherwise, who've come into my, see me in the office or in the hospital system, who didn't want to be there and therefore do not get better. If we don't want something, we're not going to do the work. We're not going to be honest. We're not going to truly show up. And I will tell you one thing, that when it comes to eating disorder treatment, the showing up, that's the most important part. The wanting, and again, it's not that we want recovery, but the not wanting to be where we are is going to be incredibly valuable. And so I just want, if that can help you untangle this blame or resentment from your father and actually acknowledge it for what it was, which was, I was having a hard time and I needed to speak up. I needed to reach out, but I didn't even want it. Just being honest with yourself about that situation could maybe help. It's not like it's going to make it go away, but it could maybe lessen this resentment, this frustration that we might be feeling towards our father, okay? Because, and the second kind of piece of this is, most parents, especially dads, now that's not to say that, males don't also have eating disorders, they do, but I find the understanding to be less than maybe a mom or a sister or another female in your life, okay? He often doesn't, parents in general don't really know what to say or how to say it. And I think his excuse of he thought that you had it under control is really his way of saying, I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. And those are both tough truths, right? That you didn't really want his help and you have to take ownership over your own recovery, but also he didn't know what to do, and so he decided to do nothing. And those are the truth. Both sides, those are the truths, really. Now, to your question, I just felt like that needed to be addressed. Now, to your question, how do I move on from this? We have to take time to be honest with ourselves about the situation. Like you said, I didn't even want help back then. And you're holding a grudge for him not, I don't know what it would have looked like. I guess that's another question to journal about, is if my dad had spoken up and had done something, what would he have most likely done? And would that have been beneficial for us? Would we have been able to receive the help? Would it have caused a rift between me and my dad? Let's be honest about what that could look like. And you could even do best case, worst case, most likely case. We could play it out. That's fine too. I think that kind of helps us be honest and see it for what it was. Because yes, he should have spoken up or tried to get you support. Would that have changed how we are now? I don't really know. Like I said, I've had tons of patients be forced to see me, and that's not always ideal. If they don't want to get better, they don't. And eating disorders, oh my God, I've had patients that were forced by their parents into treatment. When I worked at the treatment facilities, like the inpatients, people would come in and they'd be like on their 15th stint at a treatment facility because they're being forced. And it wasn't until they really wanted to get better because they didn't like how things were that they finally started to improve. And so I don't know if any of that's helpful, but sometimes I find placing blame on a parent, like I'm sure there's stuff in your upbringing that created this eating disorder. There are things that happen that cause you to utilize this coping skill to manage, whether that was like things in my life were out of control. Maybe that's a lot of loss or a lot of moving or chaos or abuse, whatever happened. There might be some rightful blame to be placed on your family or your dad or whomever, right? But we have to take ownership over the fact that it's us and it's our situation. And if we were forced to get help, it may not really have been what we thought it could have been, right? Because you said like, I didn't even want help. So would that have really made things better? Are we maybe not angry or holding a grudge against our dad, but we're angry at ourselves? And that's stuff to talk about in therapy. Because we can be super frustrated with myself. I was just rereading edits of my book that's coming out this December. And there's some stuff I'm sharing in there that I'm like, ugh, it's like so annoying that I even did that. Or I'm like, why were you like that? Ugh, so embarrassing. Or I'm so frustrated. Or like, I'm just upset with myself, right? And when we're upset, when we feel embarrassed, when we maybe have some shame, that is often protected with anger, frustration. And it can be misplaced because it's hard to admit when we're angry with ourselves. It can be hard to admit for some of us that we've done the things to put us in this position. Now, I'm not saying, again, like that it's all your fault. That's not the point that I want to get across. The point I want to get across is that we each are responsible for certain pieces of this. And I'm just curious where this like grudge is coming from, where this anger is coming from. If you're honest and you said you didn't even want help back then, and I don't even know what he could have done, there's nothing, I would have been so frustrated. Then we have to be, realistic about that. Be honest with ourselves about that situation and knowing that like, even if he had done it, it actually wouldn't have changed anything. And that might be the tough truth that it's hard for us to swallow. That even if he did something, it wouldn't have made it better. I don't know. I know there's a lot to untangle here, but I hope that kind of helps you see a way out. Because yes, your dad should have done something sooner. Parents often don't know what to say or do. However, we have to be honest about ourselves too. Okay? And I find honesty in the like uncomfortable, like I don't want to really I don't want to be candid about the fact that I'm to blame too. And that people that I love are to blame. That's a hard thing sometimes. Or that like maybe even if they did help me, I still wouldn't have accepted it. That can be hard to admit too. And sometimes it's in those admissions that we untangle ourselves and move on. Moving on to question number 3, it says, "Hi, Katie, I hope you're doing well." I am. I hope you're doing well. My question is, how do I stop engaging in eating disorder behaviors? And why when I stop doing one behavior, another begins? Oh, the toggling back and forth. So common. I hope this comment isn't triggering to anyone. There's no numbers, but I've had an eating disorder for 5 years and was diagnosed with anorexia binge purge subtype. Over the last 5 years, I've been in a constant cycle of starving, binging, purging, skipping meals, or skipping medication to lose weight and over-exercising. I had a significant weight loss and gain over the last 5 years, as one usually does in an eating disorder, depending on what behaviors I was using at the time. I always struggle with feeling like there's nothing wrong with my eating habits because of my current size. We'll talk about this. And even when I eventually lose the weight again, it's still never enough. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do to stop, because if I stop engaging in, say, over-exercising, I'll purge more frequently. Or if I stop binging, I will not eat at all, etc. I haven't felt like myself in years and I want to change, but I don't know what to do. I've been in therapy for a year and gained a lot of weight, but I'm still engaged in a lot of behaviors. My therapist cancels on me at the very last minute. Oh, okay, we'll talk about that too. Before every other session, and I only end up seeing her once a month. No. So she's not someone I can depend on to show up and help me, and switching is not an option. How come we can't switch? My family is aware but doesn't see the issue as I always manage to get fat again. That's not okay. We have so much to unpack here. Doctors also know, but just say to continue therapy. Yeah, because they are correct. I'm so stuck and I genuinely don't want to be this way, but I don't know how to change. Sorry for the super long question. If I got off topic, any advice is so appreciated. You didn't get off topic at all. There's a lot to unpack here. Now, first, let's start with some definitions. Now, anorexia binge purge subtype simply means that in order for us to be diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, we have to be underweight, and it's like 85% or less of our ideal body weight. That's something decided by a physician. That's not something that a therapist decides. That's something that a doctor will tell you, okay? And that's kind of part of the reason that when I would see eating disorder patients in my private practice, I send them out to a doctor first. Like I'll see them and then I'm like, I can't make another appointment until you see this doctor, okay? Or you have an appointment for the doctor because we want to make sure, first of all, that all that stuff's taken care of, okay? So there's that piece, and that's what that is. Now, I want to say for everybody to hear that eating disorders don't just exist in a restrictive type. Eating disorders aren't just underweight people. Eating disorders exist in all shapes, sizes. It doesn't discriminate. I don't care where you're from or who you are or any of those things. It doesn't matter. Eating disorders are coping skills for bigger things going on. It's a thing that we do because the only thing that we can manage or control is ourselves and our body. It's true. It's usually an indicator that there's something else going on in our life that feels very chaotic, very out of control. And that because we don't have any control over those things, we've probably done everything we can to try to act in a certain way. Maybe we fawn, maybe we people please, maybe we do all the right things. We're perfectionists. We do all of that and nothing changes. And so we turn it in on ourselves. And we're like, well, the only thing I really can control is me. Okay. Just putting that out there. Now, the binge purge subtype of anorexia, I forgot I didn't say that part, is that we are underweight. However, we engage in binging and purging behaviors. Okay, so it's almost like bulimia, but we are less than 85% of our ideal body weight, and that's to be determined by a doctor. Okay, all of that to say that your therapist sucks. If they can't be frequent, if they can't be consistent with you, and you can't see, once a month is not enough. I don't know. You said change is not an option. That would be my first thing is I'd ask you to find someone else, an eating disorder specialist with some kind of consistency. For the love of God, that would be awesome. Second, you could let your therapist know, hey, I need more than one session a month, and that tends to be what we get. Can you schedule me in more frequently? Or not cancel? I don't know what the reasons for canceling are, but as a therapist, I can probably count. I practiced since 2009. The amount of times I canceled is very low, especially last minute. That would never happen. I remember one time it happened because I got food poisoning, and my dad died. Other than that, it was planned out. I'm going on vacation, or I had this thing coming, and that's not really canceling. That's scheduling time off. That's actually self-care. But these last minute cancellations are not appropriate, not okay. I know someone could have things going on, or maybe they have children and they get sick. They need to figure out how to manage that, because for the job that we do, that's just not appropriate. I know shit happens, but that's really inconsistent. And if it's happening so frequently, essentially what you're telling me is that 3 times a month this is happening to you. That's not okay. That's not okay. And so I would let them know I need to see you at least every week. Because when I canceled with one patient, I would reschedule for another day. Or if I was fully booked, maybe they'd miss that week. But again, I cannot think of any other times where it was very last minute like that. I just can't. Given I don't have children, right? And I don't have a chronic illness myself. But those are things that as therapists, we have to mitigate, and we have to actually communicate with our patients about. That's when some self-disclosure is important, so that we don't have this type of situation happening. So I try to find another therapist, or potentially at least let this one know that this isn't working. And I want you to know that until we figure out the root of our eating disorder, it's going to keep cropping up in other ways. Like you said, sometimes I'm doing this, and then I'm doing that, and then I'm over-exercising, then I'm binging, purging, then I'm restricting, and it's all over the place, because the reason that it exists is still very active. Things in your life maybe still feel chaotic. And we aren't going to be able to, sorry, I have the pod nose, where it itches because I'm talking, because of the vibration. Anyway, the truth about it is that the eating disorder will not go away until we figure out that root. And that root issue could be anything from my job feels very overwhelming, or my relationships aren't doing well. Like maybe my marriage is failing. Maybe my friendships are, we're fighting, not talking. Maybe my family communications are not working out. Whatever it is, maybe I'm just arguing with everybody. Maybe I have an alcoholic or a drug addict in my family or in my close group of people that I care about. Maybe I have a child who's not doing well. There can be any number of things that are, technically out of your control that could be causing this. And I want you to think about when your eating disorder started, what drives the behavior. Are there things that make it get worse or less than? And that thing, that abuse or that difficulty in relationships or that addiction in my family or, relationships, whatever that thing is, that's what we have to address. That's what we have to talk about in therapy. And that's what we need to really work on and process through, because once we heal that cause, that root, then the eating disorder does not need to exist anymore. The reason we created it no longer exists. And that, in my belief system, is the only way for us to recover from an eating disorder, is to acknowledge, identify, and heal the root cause. And I know for some of you might be like, well, it's not one thing. It could be 1,000 things, but they probably all have a certain type of feeling or a certain type of pattern associated with them. And your eating disorder is your only way to cope. It's your only way to deal. And so that's how you move forward. That's how we get out of this like yo-yo teeter-tottering, because it's very, very common I always have said this before, that eating disorders are shapeshifters. They find ways to continue to be in your life no matter what happens. If we can't restrict anymore because we're on vacation and everybody's expecting us to eat, then we start purging. If we can't purge anymore because people have noticed, or we're afraid, or we're in tight quarters and someone's going to hear us, then we start restricting, or we might over-exercise, right? It does whatever it needs to do for us to still feel like it's doing its job, because the eating disorder serves a purpose. Again, it's there for a reason. We have to figure out what that reason is. And until we do that, it's going to keep finding ways to pop up, even though it looks different. I remember my friend Lindsay Sterling was talking about her eating disorder recovery and how it would come back up, and she would say, I know you're wearing a different wig and a dress, but I know who you are. And that's what the eating disorder do. It dresses up in different things. It acts like it's a totally different person, totally different behavior. No, this is health. This is wellness. I'm a vegan now. Oh, I'm just more like, conscious about the environment. So I don't eat those types of foods. The restriction can show up in a lot of different ways. Or I'm just eating intuitively. Binge eating can be sneaky that way, right? I want you to know that it will keep showing up until we figure that out, okay? I hope that helps at least untangle, but we really need to get you into therapy more consistently too. Moving on to number 4, this question says, Katie, how do you work on eating disorder behaviors like binging and purging while simultaneously working on reparenting and inner child work and internal family systems therapy, or IFS, in sessions? I see a therapist and a nutritionist, and eating disorder behaviors have decreased. So we started working on some reparenting things, and that has brought up some behaviors again for me in the past few weeks. Feeling ashamed since I'd made a lot of progress, but I know I'm still holding on to these behaviors to self-soothe when the childhood stuff comes up. There you have it. Thank you for your help, Katie. Of course. Okay. So much to talk about. Now, this is a tricky thing about eating disorder recovery, is that when we do the work on that root that I was just talking about, that cause, the reason our eating disorder exists, like for you, it's this reparenting inner child work. You said when childhood stuff comes up, we're so triggered. We want to go right into that eating disorder behavior because that's how we soothed, right? Very common. Okay. So that's happening. And in order for us to, it's like we're kind of caught, right? It almost feels like a catch-22 that we need to do that reparenting work because sweet Jesus, that's super triggering. But we also don't want to engage in the eating disorder behaviors anymore. And that's where, honestly, coping skills and having a ton in our toolbox really come into play, and we distract like a motherfucker. And what I mean by that is doing this work, the work that we need to do in order to kind of let go of our eating disorder, right? So it doesn't have that purpose anymore. We don't need it anymore as much, right? I want everybody to know that even when we're recovered from an eating disorder, sometimes when we get super stressed out or we have a triggering event, maybe somebody mentioned something from our childhood that we've processed, but we still, every once in a while when our resilience is low, maybe we haven't slept as well, it can be triggering, right? And we'll have a thought, I could do X, Y, Z, insert eating disorder behavior. We can still have that propensity for it. However, because we're recovered, because we've healed that root issue, we won't engage in it because we know better. We know it doesn't take us where we want to be, right? It's not actually what we want to do. And so all of that to say that we're going to need, while we do this important work, the work we have to do, the reparenting, the inner child work, we're going to need to have extra coping skills, so many distractions, healthy distractions, to mitigate the urge to use those eating disorder behaviors. Now, will we slip up? Of course. Does that mean all is lost? Absolutely not. Eating disorder recovery is like a 3 steps forward, 1 step back kind of process, especially when we're doing this work, because it's so triggering, because we're essentially talking about processing, being honest about the thing that caused the eating disorder to begin with. That's a lot. So give yourself a little compassion, a little understanding. Maybe save this video, rewatch this portion again so you know that what you're going through doesn't mean that you're not recovered or not trying to recover. It doesn't mean that you're not working hard enough, and it definitely doesn't mean something's wrong with you. You are doing the best you can with what you've got. Kudos to you. That is hard work, okay? And so my advice is keep doing the reparenting inner child stuff. I know it's hard. I know it's uncomfortable. Keep pushing forward with your therapist. Let your therapist know that you need more coping skills. Now, I have a video, 25 coping skills. It's an oldie but a goodie. I should probably have a redo. Check that video out. I'd encourage you to get both distraction and process-based coping skills. Depending on what you're going to need in the moment, we're going to need them all. Write them down or put them in notes on your phone so you have them with you when you need them most. And come up with some other ideas with your therapist as well. We'll get through this. It's not perfect, but we're going to keep moving, right? It's progress, not perfection. So keep taking 1 step and putting 1 foot in front of the other. I know you feel ashamed, but I want you to know that this is a very normal process. I know I can't take away that feeling for you or make it better, but I can at least let you know that the truth is that what you're going through is incredibly common. That's what my patients usually report when they're doing this work, that it's super triggering and we slip up from time to time. But do your best to be honest with your therapist about the slip-ups. Let them know you need more coping skills and just keep doing this, because trust me when I tell you, it does get better. Okay? And so we on to question number 5. This question says, "Hi, Katie. My name is Melissa." Hi, Melissa. "I'm 49 years old. I have abandonment and trust issues. I have extremely low self-esteem." Oh, I hate this. "I was emotionally abused and bullied as a child," just to list a few of my issues. "My question is, how do I deal with losing my therapist?" Oof. "I've only been seeing her for about 4 months, but I finally got to a point where I was feeling okay with sharing things with her. Then she told me last week that she'll be leaving the practice the 2nd week of June. Are you not able to keep going with her?" We'll talk about this. "I'm having a hard time with this. It took me 4 years to find a therapist, and now that I finally did, she's leaving. Please help me." First of all, I'm so sorry. I had something similar happen where I had a great therapist, Rebecca. You guys, if you've been following me for a long time, you've heard of Rebecca. She was my therapist at Pepperdine when I was going to school. It was through school. Thank God it was free. I could see her like twice a week. It was when my dad was getting super, super sick, and I was having all the issues. I was like over exercising. I was like binge drinking on the weekends. I was like lashing out. I was rage filled. It was not a good time for Katie. It was not my proudest moment. And she was a godsend and I loved her. And then they forced her to retire. She thought she had 5 more years and they were like, no. And so a couple of things. First of all, I want you to see if you can follow your therapist. Sometimes you can. I don't know if you can ask that, because okay, now this is just a little inside baseball, meaning like this is like behind the scenes of therapists, is that if we are leaving a practice, there's usually stuff in our contract with said practice saying that we can't ask our patient to come with us. The practice doesn't want to lose that money, really. But so we can't say that. However, as a patient, you can ask the therapist, "Hey, where are you going to be? Can I see you at this other place?" Now, depending on insurances or how this is being covered, that might not be available. Like Rebecca was leaving school and I couldn't afford therapy, so I couldn't see her outside of the school system because that was free, right? But in your case, maybe you can. You just have to ask that. So let's do that, okay? Because then if you've asked, then she can tell you. If you don't ask, she can't. Okay? I know that's shitty, but now we all know, and please share this. So there's that. Then another thing that I want you to do, there's like 2 other things really. Number 1 is I want you to jot down some of the reasons that you like her, some of the reasons you connect with her, some of the reasons that you feel like she was the right fit for you, because that will help us if we have to go out and find someone else. Okay, so take your time with that. And then the final piece I want to talk about is grieving. When you lose a therapist, like when I lost Rebecca, I was like devastated. I mean, she'd give me some referrals and I tried to see someone, they were $150 an hour, which this was like 2009. I was in grad school or undergrad even. But I had no money, so it didn't really matter. Anyway, we have to take the time to be sad about it, to grieve this loss, because it was really important. So it's okay to cry about it, to be angry about it. I encourage you to journal about all the feelings that come up for you, good, bad, indifferent. It doesn't matter. You're not supposed to feel one kind of way. I just encourage you to allow yourself the time to process it and to feel it. And I do want to encourage you very, very strongly to not let this potential thought process about like, I'm never going to find someone else like her. I don't want you to give that thought any more like time or energy. I want you to move into instead, I'm going to miss her because I was really connected, but at least I now know what to look for in a therapist, and I'm going to find someone else that's going to be just as good, if not better. I want you to think about it that way. Force your brain into that, because we tend to, look for and create our reality. And so I want your reality to be one where you find someone that's just as good, if not better. Okay. Yeah, keep me posted. I hope that helps. I'm so sorry you're losing her. It's so hard to lose a therapist. That grieving process can take some time. So allow yourself the space to do it. Okay. Final question number 6 says, "Hi, Katie. Why does my body reject nice things that happen to me?" Interesting. I'm currently in school seeking help from the school counselor and will start therapy outside of school later on. Wonderful. I have trauma from previous counselors. Invalidating my concerns when I was younger, as well as my parents doing the same. So I'm wondering if it has to do with that. I am so sorry on behalf of all mental health professionals out there. I'm so sorry that you even had this happen, that the previous counselor invalidated your concerns. I hate hearing this. I'm so sorry. It says, after a long struggle talking to an adult figure in school about what happened, I got told that I was doing really well for explaining my troubles. And for once, I felt that my troubles were being acknowledged. Amazing. And then I would feel my chest ache or nausea and the want to cry. Keyword want. My body doesn't let me cry. It's like I want to accept it, but my body just doesn't let me. The same reaction happens when I'm in with the school counselor. I've spoken about this to her before, but I still struggle to wrap my head around it. So why is this? Is this because of past experiences? Yes. Is it because of my inability to cry about things? It's connected, but not necessarily that. Or is it something else? I hope you have a lovely day. I hope you have a lovely day too. Now, let's talk about this. When we feel like our body can't accept the nice things, the good things that happen, most often it's because in the past, when we accepted a good thing and we kind of relaxed into it and felt joy or felt excited or felt seen, heard, understood, that meant that we let our guard down. We were more vulnerable to people being able to harm us. And unfortunately, in the past, that usually meant that we were harmed. Therefore, it does not feel safe for us to let that guard down, to get excited, to really relax into it, to feel like we are seen and heard and have that moment. It feels too dangerous. And so we keep that wall up. And that's a lot of times why we can't even, for other people, this can show up in a smaller way. And I don't say smaller to be like less significant, just like in a different, like small bits of our life where people like offer us compliments or tell us we're doing a good job or something like that. And we like can't accept them because maybe in the past if we said, oh, thank you, they're like, you're so conceited, you selfish bitch, or something. Like there was some nasty something that happened. Or we've been told phrases like that, even outside of that situation, that made us believe that's who we are. And so we don't want to accept that because that might make it true. Does that even make sense? I hope so. And so overall, our bodies reject these nice things because it feels too dangerous. It feels that if we accept it, then we're opening ourselves up to pain. And the truth about this is that it's normal. It's a trauma response. I believe it's coming from this trauma of invalidation that you received before. However, our only way through, and I know this is shitty, is to start like doing our best to allow for it. We can untangle, like healing from the trauma is going to be huge here, but also allowing ourselves to accept these nice things. I know we're going to feel, like you said, tightness in your chest, or chest ache and nausea. I want you to try to breathe through it. Try to change the conversation in your head to, wow, that's really amazing. I'm getting positive feedback. I am doing really well. I am feeling better. Like reinforcing that positive, like those positive messages that you've received, and keep pushing forward. And the reason I say that is because exposing ourselves to good things and not having something terrible happen afterwards is going to slowly prove to our brain and our nervous system as a whole that it is okay, that we're not in danger, that we can be safe, that it's going to be okay. And so all of that will slowly kind of untangle this and disprove this old trauma belief, so much so that we can slowly start to accept these good things. Okay? It takes time. Again, that processing from that trauma and like healing from the things that happened and essentially those invalidating experiences you had, that's going to be paramount to all of this healing. But in the meantime, letting yourself continue to encounter these positive things and not run away. Yes, I know you'll want to cry, you'll feel tightness and but keep, telling yourself is okay. This is true. Good things do happen to me. I am a good person. I am doing well, whatever you need to tell yourself, and keep moving forward. And that will slowly but surely kind of diminish that intense response. You'll find it'll get stronger maybe the first couple of times, and then it will slowly lessen over time as we keep engaging in it. Okay? Hang in there. It will get better. Healing is possible, and you will be able to accept the nice things that happen to you. Okay? Thank you all so much for listening and watching. I hope you like this new format. Let me know if you don't. I'm always open to feedback. That's why I'm switching things up. I ask for questions on Sundays. If you're like, I want a question answered, I ask for it on my main channel. Maybe I should move it to my podcast channel, but for right now, it's on the Katie Morton channel, my main YouTube channel, on Sundays around 2 p.m. or so. I try to move the time around for different time zones. I ask for your questions, so make sure you have your notifications turned on so you can ask yours and get it in. I'll get through as many of them as I can. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Do your homework, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, honey, I'm all finished.